I was waiting for you.
Okay, let's gather back together and proceed with the second workshop session, session on program assessment, and this will be facilitated by Emily Alicia Munoz. Take it away, Emily.
My presentation clicker is not working now. Why are you doing this? Okay, well, all right. Presentation clicker is not working, so I'm going to be tethered to the podium. But okay, so this morning you learned all about like setting goals, and you made your goals SMART goals that are measurable and attainable. So now we're going to talk about assessment. Okay, maybe the presentation clicker will work now. Oh, yeah, it did. Okay. Okay, so the goals of this session is that we're going to draft the program assessment plan, and we're going to assess we're going to plan for assessing the TAs and the program. So this is like a twofold assessment stuff. We're going to assess the TA program, and we're going to assess the TAs. So when we think about assessment, come on. Why? Okay. So when we think about assessment, we first think of grades, given an A, B, C, whatever. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is about feedback. The type of assessment that we're going to do is going to be used for providing continuous feedback for the program and for the teaching practices of the TAs. And it goes in a cycle. We basically have, you plan your program, you implement it, you review, and then you update. And then the update that you made, you then implement it, and then you review it, and then you review again, and so on. And we need to keep in mind that your goals, your assessments, and your activities have to be aligned with each other. There's this tug of war that your goals have to be measurable by assessments, and your activities have to be tailored to your goals and your assessments. So you have to keep in mind everything when you're creating your assessment plan. So what type of assessments are we talking about? So there's two types: the formative assessments and the summative assessments. The formative assessments are to monitor how things are going. They happen in the middle of things, and the idea is that they will provide you with information to make changes right then and there. And then there's the summative assessments that the goal for those is to evaluate. These are what happens at the end of things to sum up what is it that happened and how things were affected by whatever intervention you did. So using the ABCD cards that you used this morning, in your department right now, what kind of assessments do you have for your TAs or for your TA program? Yeah, mostly summative, some formative, mostly summative, some formative, all summative, or nothing. So think about that for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So I see some B's, and the B's are mostly summative. I see a lot of D's. These are all summative. Okay, so it seems the majority of people have all summative or mostly summative and only some formative assessments, which doesn't surprise me because this is what you answered in the pre-workshop survey. I asked what kinds of assessments your TAs receive, and most people said end of semester student evaluations, end of semester supervisor evaluations. Some people have classroom observations, some people have no feedback, and then there were others. So it seems that most people rely on summative assessments, but we're going to talk about doing more than that, doing formative assessments. So there's 3 types of formative assessments that we're going to talk about now. So first is a priori. This is where you sit down and you figure out what exactly is it that our department is doing right now. Okay? Then there's classroom observations, which are when you observe the TAs in the classroom. And then there's midterm evaluations, which happen in the middle of the semester, early enough to allow for implementation of the feedback and to improve things as the program goes along. So let's start with an a priori. Everybody should have this handout packet. So I want everybody individually to look at this packet where it says our department does something, and you evaluate if you're strong in this, if you need attention to this topic, or if you're lacking. And notice that there's a lot of blank spaces as well, so you can write out more things that you want to think about what your department is doing in terms of TA preparation. And let's do this individually first, and then after you fill out this by yourself, you talk to your institutional partner and see if you're both on the same page. Okay? So 5 minutes. Go. It seems so. Yeah. Don't forget to discuss with your institutional partner.
It's pretty like, you tell me. Yeah. Like when Jordan was like, okay, like everybody was quiet.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that never happened. In no part of my life does that actually ever happen. He's like, what, are you team lit now? What are you? Who are you? What are you doing now? Feedback.
Okay, so
Thomas first. What you would call provost, what we call the senior VP bracket. So formally, that's who I report to. But I've seen. I mean, I'm practically I don't think that the dean that feels like they have any authority. But we work really hard to collaborate. I guess. And they don't just I guess the senior VP gives me the project money, program, core budget. So I report, but like I'm not on an organizational chart in terms of like academic leadership, right? So. Very vigorous. No one. So get it fast. Whenever this find other
What is the instructional? What are the course credits? Do we have any ideas for the how students learn in our discipline? Again, that's why
we don't actually have a position called provost. We have.
well, who did the VPs
All right, 5 minutes are up. So, hello everyone. Okay, so I know this is a good discussion that you got going, but there will be more time to do this. So, but for now, so you guys filled out this worksheet. How many people have mostly strong? Mostly needs attention. Okay, mostly lacking. Okay, so that's what we're here. That's why we're here. We're gonna change those lackings to maybe needs attention, change those needs attention to strong, maybe move directly from lacking to strong. That'd be good. So, so this is your starting point. Okay, so we've evaluated how is it that our department assesses, and we have identified the areas that need improvement. So now let's move on to some other kinds of assessments. In particular, classroom observations. If you're not doing classroom observations, I strongly encourage you to start doing classroom observations. But you can't just say, okay, the classroom observation fairy will go ding, and the classroom observations are done. You have to think about the logistics. So, and that's what we're going to do now. There's this worksheet in the next page, says classroom observation logistics. So the logistics you're going to think about is, if we're going to do classroom observations, who is doing the observations? Who should, could, would do the observations for your department? How often do these observations need to be conducted? Is it once a semester? Is it twice a semester? Is it once a week? Is it every class? Does anyone even have time to observe all TAs in every class? And then based on the goals for your program, what kind of information do you want to gather from these observations to provide feedback to the TAs and to the TA program facilitators? Because you can just go sit there and observe someone teaching a 3-hour lab, but if you're not thinking about what kind of information you want to extract from that observation, you just wasted 3 hours. So who does the observations? How often? what information do we want to get from the observations? Go. In teams. Oh, there's a question.
So the phrasing of these questions, I think, for many departments is very aspirational. Who should do them, I think, is a very different question than who can.
Okay.
Should we be answering who can? Should we be, because in theory, we could have a person doing observations in every classroom every time and doing the full everything, but that's not realistic. So should we be planning on who can do them, who is available and has the time commitment, or should we be thinking about who we would want to if we had unlimited resources?
So the question was, in who does the observations, are we answering who should do the observations or who can do the observations? Because those are not necessarily the same people. Do both. Think about who should, then think about who can, and maybe you can build from who can to who should. They didn't have any?
I didn't find the what I want. Like,
Oh no, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I got this. This will sort of warm us up a little.
Okay. We also opened the door, so it should be a little warmer.
Okay. Thank you.
And they're the ones where supposed to do the yeah, it's got like the Arctic blast.
If like new
Yes, exactly. That's the
So who should somehow I think it should still be volunteer.
right, yeah.
Not just sitting in the front.
Yes, that's basically
Are you asking about the? Yeah. It's really easy. It's just with animations in PowerPoint.
Yeah, so what issues comes into this, like, what are the goals for your
Yeah, right. So we're back to this problem.
Subjective.
They're supposed to also be doing discussing in their teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you haven't already, start sharing amongst your teams. If you all are on the same page.
Some faculty are better than others. Some are terrible. Well, I don't know what he's doing.
I don't know how.
All right, so 5 minutes are up. I want to hear first from people who are already doing classroom observations. Who conducts your observations? Yes.
The lab coordinator who sets the lab curriculum.
Okay, so in San Jose State,
San Jose State.
the lab coordinator who sets the lab curriculum is the one who does the classroom observations. And let's see. UC Davis?
We have a designated TA who helps the lab coordinator who does that.
Okay, so in UC Davis, we have a TA doing the classroom observations. Anybody else wants to share? Over here, Penn State.
Well, once upon a time, I did it all. Then I had a TA trainer help me, and had them do it all. Both of which are really hard because there's way too many TAs, and it's really hard to observe and provide feedback for 30 plus people in a short period of time. Now it is the supervisors, the faculty, each have 3 or 4 TAs under them, and it's pretty clear they should show up in recitation and spend time there. I don't know how many of them they observe. I don't know how much feedback they provide to their TAs, but right now it's faculty.
Okay, so yes.
So we do, at NC State, we do, the lab director does the observations for everybody and the first semester, and then the second semester we do a peer observation where we pair them up with another TA and they have to provide feedback to each other.
Okay, but this is after they've already TA'd.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so let's have Uma.
At FIU, the stock room, when they go into prep, are watching for any safety stuff, and they bring it to the attention of the coordinator if they notice any safety violations. And also they're kind of, when they go in, they're kind of watching to see what the TA is doing in terms of teaching, and if there's something going on, they will let us know. If the TA is just not paying attention, off working on the computer, not working with the students, or anything, we'll know.
Okay.
But they're not watching for evidence-based teaching, anything like that.
Okay. All right, so we've heard a variety of who does the observations. We have other TAs, we have faculty, we have dedicated faculty, we have technicians. Now, for those of you who don't have classroom observations and you're just thinking about this now, and the people who answer differently from who should and who can, let's hear some of that. Who should do the observations? Yes.
At San Jose State, we have multiple lecture sections are mixed and then put into different lab sections. So I think all the lecture instructors should observe the labs.
Okay. So all the lecture instructors should observe the lab.
since I do the TA training, I know what the TAs are supposed to be doing, so I probably should be the one to do it, because I can't though, I can't. So I tell the faculty they have to, but I think some of them have no idea. They haven't attended training, they don't know what I've told the TAs to do, so it's a mixed bag.
How about over here?
Thank you. I think it's really nice to say faculty ought to do it. However, I have labs that run from 7:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, 4 days a week. Friday it shuts down at 7, and Saturday afternoon labs, and I'm the one who does it. Now, I'm sorry, but I also teach. There's no way that as a faculty I can observe all of those labs. I've had to delegate it, and I'm not going to stay there from 7 o'clock till midnight. 6 days a week. I'm not going to do it. So, in defense, we have to be able to delegate this out to somebody and give them guidelines on how to observe and what to observe.
Yeah. And that brings us to the who can do the observations. Because yes, everybody's time is limited. And just to give another example, so here in Georgia Tech, when we started doing classroom observations, I should say when I started doing classroom observations, and then the next year I did the classroom observations, and then the next year I did the classroom observations, and it was like, I have classes, I have research, I want to graduate. And then somebody offered to help. And so then now there's 2 people doing classroom observations. So you have to have a little give and take there for who should to who can. So who can do classroom observations? Who do you, for your institution, who can do them? Yes.
I think peer feedback can be very valuable as long as it is done in a manner that is non-threatening. And as long as the feedback is constructive. I have seen it work with LAs, which are learning assistants, undergraduate learning assistants in the classroom. And I think it can be made to work with graduate TAs also.
Okay. So peer evaluations, TAs evaluating other TAs. What else? Yes.
Hey, this just occurred to me, and I have no idea of the legality of it, but can we record the activities and use the recording to provide feedback later, so you don't necessarily have to be there on Saturday, but you take a video of what's going on in the classroom? I don't know if that violates some privacy or some legal issue, but.
So in terms of videotaping TAs, as long as you have the TA's permission, and you mention to the students, hey, we're here videotaping your TA. If you don't want to be in the video, let me know and I'll avoid you. You should be able to videotape. But then it's who does the videotaping. If you have a stationary camera that can take good video of the whole room, that's automated. But if you need a human tripod to walk around and record, then you still have the issue of who does the classroom observations.
I was thinking like some stationary thing where you would just. I don't think you need detail, like looking around, but if you had enough to figure out, hey, what kind of process they were doing, you could.
Yeah. So that's an option also, like recording. Yes, over here.
I have a question. I have a question on this observations, about the observations. Like, how should it be done? Like, so the TAs should be notified before, like, so I am or somebody else is coming to observe your class, or it should be done like out of blue, like so without giving any information. What is a good way to do that? Thank you.
Okay. That's like 2 slides ahead.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get to that. We will. Okay. So now, based on the goals of your TA program, what kind of information do you collect from these observations? Let's say you find the person who has the time to go observe, and they go and observe the TAs teaching. What are they observing for? Is it that they write good on the whiteboard? Is it that they speak loud enough to be heard? Or is it actual teaching stuff? Like what actual teaching stuff?
I'm working on the pedagogy course, so I'm learning now, so I came here to learn more. But PCK, pedagogical content knowledge. So I think we should observe both, like what is the content the TAs are delivering, like that is one part, and how are they teaching, like the pedagogy kind of thing. So both should be focused, I think. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So focus on both pedagogy, pedagogical content knowledge, and the mechanics of the teaching. Did you have your hand up?
I was something. I think the most important thing is, like from my experience, what students tell me is like a lot of the TAs are not good in their subject matter and knowledge. So the most important thing would be like, in terms of observations, to maybe know if the TAs are actually delivering the correct content, because the basis of teaching is giving you know, the correct knowledge or giving correct information to the students. So that's the number one thing.
So again, with the content, it is important that the TAs are not telling students, well, you know, F equals MV. And they need to transfer the correct knowledge to the students. What else? Anybody else? Okay.
I think I'm lucky because usually content is not an issue. There's probably a few, but I overall, what I've found most effective is to literally just be in the classroom. Lately I go to recitations and I just start helping the students out, just like the TAs, because we do active and collaborative things. The TAs often do an opening little thing, so I'm there to observe that, so I get a feel for what they're doing. And I think the most useful thing that I can tell the TAs is then to give them, like, here's what I saw. Here's how it felt. So you're giving them climate, the room was comfortable, people were talking to me, they were talking to you, you know, that kind of thing. Because I think, my experience with the TAs is they have no idea. You know, you go into class, you start teaching, or doing whatever you do, you don't even know how it's coming across. So it's very comforting to them to know that I could see you were you're getting around the room and that you were talking to people. Like, it's just good to just plain have observations. And then I also try to teach my TAs. We have learning assistants in the classroom with the TAs, and I make my TAs evaluate that. So I tell them, just tell me what they do. Don't tell me it's good or it's bad. Just tell me what they do. Because that's an observation, and that gives the TA, the LAs, feedback. So they know not only what they're doing, and that somebody noticed it.
Exactly. And over here?
I think one of the most valuable pieces of information that you can get from observing a classroom is not necessarily watching the TA itself, but watching the students. Because the students will tell you exactly how effective the TA is and how ineffective the TA is. If you look around the room and you see all the students are actively engaged with the material and they're working, they're dealing with the concepts that are being presented, that's usually a good sign that things are going well. If they're pulling out their smartphones, if they're looking on Facebook, if they're on a different course, that's also an indication that maybe something needs to be changed within that classroom.
Right. So we've heard. So what to observe? Maybe not just the TAs, but also the students, because the students will reflect what the TAs are doing. So now, let's think about. Okay, so we have these ideas for how to do the classroom observations and what information we want to get, but then how do you actually do it? Like, what do you just sit there and think, or do you write things down, or what? So for that, there's different observation protocols. I have passed out 4 different observation protocols. In each pod, each team will have a different one. There is the lab skills checklist. 1 table per pod should have that one. Then there is the individual classroom observation feedback evaluation sheet. Then there is the instructor coding of the TA teaching instrument. And then there's the TA.IOP, Teaching Assistant Inquiry Observation Protocol. So each team has a different one. So what I want you to do is each team will look over their assigned observation protocol and identify its strengths and weaknesses. And you write them down in the worksheet packet that everybody got. Then you will pair up with another team in your pod and you compare and discuss the similarities and differences, weaknesses and strengths between the two different observation protocols that both teams had. And now, before we get to this, I just want to emphasize, these are not the only observation protocols that exist. There are many more, and you can also write your own, okay? In fact, I wrote one of these. A candy for whoever guesses who it is. No, I'm not kidding. So, 5 minutes, go. What?
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Seems like you're having fun.
Yeah.
Girls' experience with working with versus teaching learning, how like, there was this, it seemed like from what I remember, this initiative to like, learning, work on team development into more specific discipline, or at least that's how it turned out.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if we're missing anything now. Is the name of the protocol? Is it? What is it?
Oh, over here, lab skills checklist.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it says the Centers for Digital Learning have some very generic, which are good. This is somewhat less. How to actually tailor the support program so that it's.
And remember that I want some inter-team interactions, not just intra-team, but inter-team. Two teams will compare and contrast their assigned observation protocols.
Emily, in the 5 minutes, we're doing in the 5 minutes, both.
It should be, but I can give more time if necessary.
5 minutes goes really fast.
Sorry?
5 minutes goes fast.
It works? Or it doesn't?
5 minutes?
Okay.
Or
Yeah. So
I'm asking,
it should be
your clock
everything.
runs too fast.
Yeah, the clock runs to 5 minutes. Yes. It will be completely red in 5 minutes when the 5 minutes are up.
Okay, I'm just saying it looks like it's running faster actually. It's already half done.
Yeah, because I started it 2.5 minutes ago.
I don't
Yeah.
think so.
No?
I can test it.
Maybe it is running fast. I don't know. It should be running at a rate of a second per second, but I'll give more time.
This is psychology science's version of that. That's not a right.
No, I mean, we recently started to engage in like learning communities and faculty development, but that's very recent. For undergraduate students, we built and we're piloting and measuring like our
We thought television sort of covers hearing, viewing boards, very well.
More initiative, like here's the LA initiative, but we're going to do this.
Yeah, so we're kind of like almost like an incubator. Either on our own or with more often in collaboration with the faculty or the chairs and each of them, recognize that there's a need and we sort of pilot the development. We work hard to like understand things, pilot things, and get to the point where they are like useful, then like often like it gets handed off. Or, there's a grant that comes in. And
Remember to compare with another team. Yes.
I think we are missing a paper or something.
You are?
So this is not what you should be looking at, right?
Yes, that's one of them. Yeah, lab skills checklist. Every team has a different one.
Yeah.
Because we have like three.
Every team has a different one. Yeah. So this is the lab skills checklist. That team has the individual classroom observations, evaluation sheet. That team has the TIIOP, and that team has the other one that I can't remember what the name was.
And what do you think your...
Sorry?
Did you do this one?
Yeah, you got it. I welcome all feedback. So, yeah.
I really like this.
Yeah.
That you could ask feedback. The only comment I had, I like that it's a nice mix of like subjective and objective feedback, but if only there's like more room underneath to like cite a specific example. Because the worst is when you get feedback that's like, yeah, you need to improve your reasonable time.
So that's what this space is for.
Kind of like, it would be nice if you could just write a specific example. Like, a little bit of room underneath each question to say, like, we spent 5 minutes at one group and 2 minutes out there.
I can probably add that in, yeah.
Because there's some of it's like some's like it has a nice spectrum of subjective to objective, but what helps in giving subject feedback is to be able to cite rather than just saying you need work on this, to be able to say like you spent 5 minutes at one group and 2 minutes at another.
I usually do include that in the additional, like this section is usually always completely full of stuff. But if it was right there, it would be pop out more.
Yeah, and it's easier to associate.
Yeah. Thanks for the comment. I'll definitely add that. I'll need to write it down because I will forget. Or if you want, you can email me so that way it's yes. Exactly. So that way it's actually written and I won't forget.
Yeah.
So, thank you. How's the comparison going? Has everybody paired up team-wise and teams are discussing? Yeah? Good discussion.
Chemistry, biology, math, that works. But I think if we try to do it like
All right, let's think about wrapping up. About 1 more minute of discussion, maybe 30 seconds instead.
LA is basically the sort of training they have. They don't. So what is the thing that there is like?
Everybody gets the same
For an undergrad, particularly, it's in service of these are people who are principal. I mean, in LA, you guys are so the idea of LA is that these are.
So I think this is very tailored. So if you have something that doesn't match this, then exactly.
All right. Discussion time over. Okay, so let's talk about these observation protocols. Who wants to tell me something about the lab skills checklist? Sorry?
I guess I could say something.
Okay.
So we come from a very guided inquiry-based lab, so this did not fit ours as well, especially with the lab organization part. Student performance and lab management fit a little bit better, but we would have to dramatically tailor this to our program.
Mm-hmm. So that shows as an example that not all observation protocols will fit all. It's not a one-size-fits all. You would need to have an observation protocol tailored to your program and aligned with your goals. Who else wants to tell me something about the lab skills checklist? No one wants to say anything? Okay, there's one.
Well, mostly we agree with the items here. There are things that also don't apply to us and they need to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it looks good.
Okay, cool. All right, how about the next one, the individual classroom observations evaluation sheet? Who wants to tell me something about that one?
One thing I really liked about it is it gives a line for the GTA wants instructor feedback about. So it actually gives the graduate student instructor to ask for specific feedback about something they may be having trouble with.
Okay, cool. Anybody else?
We liked this one as well. We thought it was nice and concise. One of the weaknesses we saw is that it doesn't go much into student engagement and what the students are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anybody else? No? Okay. How about the instructor coding of the TA teaching instrument? Who wants to say something about that one?
So we have that, we like that because we like the fact that it measured the TA interaction with the students and their ability to recognize when an undergrad is struggling with a concept, but we didn't like the fact that the evaluations were made on a very subjective scale and that there wasn't any real ability to add feedback to the sheet.
Mm-hmm. So this one covered the student engagement that one didn't, but then this one didn't have space for additional comments and that one did. Anybody else?
I really like this instrument for a couple of reasons. One, I think you could add numbers and create a quantitative scale, and I also feel like you could use this as a summative, how do I say that?
Summative?
Thank you. Summative or a formative assessment. So you could actually track TAs very quickly over the course of a quarter even, which I think would be really nice if you are trying to implement assessments for the first time, which is something we're starting to do for our TAs.
Mm-hmm. So the quickness of using that particular instrument. Now, how about the last instrument, the TA.IOP? Who wants to tell me something about that one?
I like this one a lot because instead of just good or very good, it gives you very particular kind of vignettes of each type of how whatever you're observing might be. It gives examples. So like if the thing you're looking for is engaging learners in planning investigations, it'll give you like the learners develop their own procedures or et cetera, et cetera. It gives you very specific so that you can see which your style matches with or whatever you're observing matches with.
So the TA.IOP is very specific, very detailed. Who else has a comment about the TA.IOP? Over here.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with the IOP is that some of the detail is too far, and it doesn't really, it's not clear whether or not if you're if you're on an A, B, C, D, E scale, it's not always clear whether or not A is better than C, which is problematic if you're trying to reflect on your evaluation. You're saying, am I doing a good job or am I doing a bad job? It doesn't really set out for TAs to be self-reflective so much as it is these are the things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But in parts, at least, in parts. So some parts are good in that they're quantitative, whereas other parts I thought were too much and superfluous.
Okay.
I would add to that and say that as an observer, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And as a person who was observed to receive this back, it would be overwhelming to try and figure out what it meant. It's very specific and has potential utility for inquiry labs, but that might be it.
It's very detailed, but it's very detailed.
But I think you can make it detailed to what you want, and so whether something is good or bad is subjective, right? So maybe a TA wants their students to create their own procedures versus something else. So I think the TA could fill it out ahead of time as to what they want to see, and then see if someone agrees. It doesn't necessarily, A through E doesn't necessarily have to be good or bad. It depends on what you're setting out to do.
Okay, so we have discussed 4 different observation protocols. There's many more. There's one called the Riot, the research instrument, something.
Instructor observation tool.
Real-time instructor observation tool. Yes, thank you. So there's a link to the Riot instrument in one of the resources documents. So for that one, it's another observation protocol that it's electronic, and you go observe and you click on when stuff is happening. So there's lots of more different observation protocols. Who wants to guess the one that I wrote? No one wants to guess? The TA.IOP? No, you can't blame me for that one. I know you know, but don't tell people. Sorry? The individual classroom observation evaluation sheet. That's the one that I wrote. So that one, as it stands right now, is the 5th iteration of it. I basically built it on our needs for what we want the TAs to get feedback on. And yes, you had a...
Just to advertise that if you're interested in the Riot, the one that Emily just mentioned, but that we didn't consider here, this team here from San Jose State, both of them are experts in Riot. So they're Riot test experts.
Rioting experts.
So you might want to chat with them if you're interested in that protocol, which again you can find in the Google Drive.
Yes. So yeah, this observation protocol that I wrote is not research validated. It's a thing that arose from the needs that we had for giving TAs feedback, and that's totally fine. You can write your own. You don't have to use an instrument that's published by somebody else, but you can use instruments because people have written these things, and the resources are out there. So why not? So. Another thing about the observations, and this comes back to your question earlier. So do you just drop in and you're like, video camera in hand, like, hey, I'm watching you teach today? No. So there should be a before and after for the observation. There should be a preparation and there should be a debrief. So before the observations, it's a good idea to tell the TAs when you're going to go observe them so they're not freaking out when they see you there with a video camera or not, or a clipboard or whatever. You should also ask your TAs things. So there should be some kind of preparation for doing the observation. So how has teaching this class gone for you so far? What goals do you have for the one particular class that I'm going to go observe you in? Like if you say, I'm observing you next Friday, what are you teaching next Friday? What are your goals for that Friday class? What methods do you use when you teach that class? What specific teaching skills would you like me to observe? So you can do this in person. You can do this by email. The way that I do it is that I create a Google form, a Google survey thing, like the pre-workshop survey that you guys filled out. And I ask them to tell me what their teaching schedule is, where they're teaching, what class they're teaching, and what do you want feedback on. And I make that one a required question so they can't just skip it. And if they write NA or nothing or none, I bug them until they tell me something. They should tell you something. They should want feedback from you. So you need to do this preparation before the observations, okay? And then after the observations, you do need to give your TAs the feedback. You can meet with them one-on-one. You can meet with a group. You can give them written feedback. But basically, you have to let them know their strengths and weaknesses while teaching. And they should reflect on that feedback and improve their teaching skills. So you can ask them, what are you going to do now that I've given you this feedback? Okay? And if you're doing a TA program, you can ask them also, what can I include in this program that will help you act on the feedback that I'm giving you? Okay? So the way that I do it is I send them, at first I tried doing one-on-one meetings with all the TAs after the observations. That became very time consuming. So what I do now is that I send them the written feedback, the eco evaluation sheet has a big space for additional comments, I fill that up in like teeny tiny font with lots of information. And I send this to them, and I tell them, if you have any questions or comments, contact me and we can meet. And then they also have an assignment in the class that they have to reflect on the feedback that they received in their observations. So they have to write that to me anyway. Even if I don't meet with them, I will know what their actions are after the feedback. Okay? So it's important to not just drop in the observations and not just leave them hanging. You have to prepare for them and you have to debrief after them. Yes, a question.
So maybe this is just from a TA standpoint, but if I know someone's coming in to watch me, I'm going to prepare a lot more than if someone just pops in personally. And I think a lot of people will do that, especially if they maybe are not comfortable with someone observing. So could you do both? Or is it more like you should warn them before you pop in?
So that's a good question. Maybe you could do both. Personally, I decided not to because my TAs, the very first time, they were just kind of skittish about it. And they were being video recorded. So the moment I showed up with the camera, they freaked out anyway, and they knew I was coming with a camera. So it depends on the context. Like if your TAs would be okay with just you dropping by, sure. And in my experience, even with some warning ahead of time, sometimes there's an EMAG test that they had to study for and they didn't really prepare that much for class. So it varies. Okay, so, now let's talk, wait. Oh, that's where I was. Okay, this is the next slide. Okay, so now let's talk about midterm evaluations. This is another formative assessment. Midterm evaluations happen in the middle of the semester. Midterm. The students evaluate the TAs anonymously. The students should get a very short questionnaire or something. They should be quick, they should be short, they should be informal, and they should be early enough in the semester for TAs to act on that feedback. If you look, I gave this handout one per pod. There's 2 handouts that says sample midterm evaluations, and then another one that says quick feedback, fast feedback? Fast feedback. So those are all examples of midterm evaluations. There's only one printout per pod, but all these documents are in the Google Drive, so you can access the PDFs of all of these. So a few sample midterm evaluations written by TAs, those are midterm evaluations that my TAs have written over the years. I tell them to write their midterm evaluation, give that to their students, the students fill it out, the TAs take them back, they look at the results, and then they write me a report of what their students told them in their midterm evaluations, and then they have to act on that feedback. But it has to be early enough that they have time to do this. If you do midterm evaluations on week 10 of a 16-week semester, it's probably too late. Oh, yours is 10 weeks. So yeah, don't do it in week 10. In our 16-week semester, I give them a period from week 5 to week 7 to do their midterm evaluations. So early enough to do change. Yes?
So I'm also on the quarter system, and midterm kind of you blink and it's over. So is there anybody who is on the quarter system and does a midterm thing, and how does the timing of that work out?
Anyone? You have midterm? Okay.
Yeah, we have a 7-week term at WPI. We don't do the midterm evaluation for TAs, right? But we do midterm evaluation for professors. I do my midterm evaluation after the first exam. And so they are helpful, like how am I doing in class, whether I'm doing good or bad, so that helps. But for TAs, we don't have that. Thank you.
Okay. So after the first test? obviously you wouldn't have a big enough time, like you can't make it a 3-week long project like I do with my students because your term is abbreviated, so you have to do a quick. But so this is all about students evaluating TAs, but we're also, as I mentioned at the start of the session, this is also about program assessment. So you also could do a midterm evaluation of the TA program. It works in the exact same way, except that TAs are the ones that do this evaluation, anonymously again. And you can have either immediate feedback after a class, or you can have a midterm feedback for everything they've done so far. I've done both of those. Every time I create a new module for TA training, I give them an end of class minute paper in which I can either ask them to tell me what things are still unclear, was this effective, or I give them a Likert scale. So rate how useful this module has been for you, 1 to 5. And then in the midterm program, remember to align your questions with your goal. For example, a couple years ago, I created a TA handbook. And I handed it out. And in the midterm evaluation, I asked, was the TA handbook useful for you? And I got a bunch of, well, it was too long. I didn't really, if you make it into a website, maybe. So then the next year, I made it into a website, and I hid links to Disney videos in the text. Like, for example, there's a part that says, be prepared to grade for several hours. The words be prepared, you click on it, and Scar goes, be prepared. In the midterm evaluations, the first question was, did you find the hidden Disney? No one did. But then that prompted them to go actually read the thing because there's hidden Disney. What? How did you do that? And then they actually went and read. So that's just an example. And you had a comment?
A quick question. So is the TA handbook for particular department or for whole university?
So that was a TA handbook for our department that I wrote.
Which department?
Physics department. Physics,
okay,
yes.
Okay.
Can we find that somewhere?
Yeah, it's gta.physics.gatech.edu.
Oh, it's online?
It's online,
Okay.
yeah. It's very specific for our classes, though. It's also still in construction, and I haven't added any of the pedagogy stuff there. But if you want to look at it, gta.physics.gatech.edu. And there's 3 hidden Disneys, so maybe you can find them. Yes?
So, a quick question about the hidden Disneys. Is there a part of you that, if you're old school, and is there a part of you that would say that you should just read the damn thing and not have to have candy with it?
Well, yeah. I mean,
I don't know if there's
so this year, last fall, after the midterm evaluations, and I asked them if they found the hidden Disneys, and only one person had found them, I said, well, in the feedback I've gotten for this course, years running, people always ask to have more details of the TA assignments. We don't have enough details in the course. You should give more details, give more details, give more details. I put the details online. If you don't read them, it's your own damn fault. So I did warn them, but after the fact. But it's there. They can't ask for it anymore because it exists. It's there. So. Any other? No? Good. Okay. So we've talked a lot about formative assessments. Now let's talk about summative assessments. So we're going to think about 2 different summative assessments, the summative assessment of the TA and summative assessment of the program. So how would you do a summative assessment of the TA? Well, you gather all the information that you have collected about the TA during the semester. Their midterm evaluations from their students, their final end of semester teaching evaluations from the students, and anything else that you have, your observation notes, if you observe them. And then what can you do with this? Well, you can use these individual TA results to improve your TA training overall. Like if you notice that all your TAs ended up with a certain deficiency, you can focus on that in your next iteration of the class when you're modifying the curriculum. You can also provide a report for each TA, telling them like, here's your journey through teaching this semester. And they could look at that and maybe reflect on their own improvement. You can also use this as evidence for TA awards. If you have TA awards in your department and you have information about what TAs are good and you have evidence, then hey, there you go. Okay. Then there's the TA program evaluation. If you create a TA program, you should get feedback at the end of it from your students, from your TAs, about how the program was useful. So, was the TA program helpful to you? How was it not helpful to you? What changes do you suggest? So this is how I found out that my TAs wanted more details about their specific teaching assignments. So the way that I do this, for example, is that I give them a Likert scale from least useful to completely useless, meh, useful, very useful. And I list everything we did in the semester, and they categorize it. They tell me what was good, what was not good. Then I ask the same question, asking them what was interesting. And then I can compare the things that interested them from the things that were useful to them, because sometimes they may not be the same thing. Don't ask me what the results are. I haven't analyzed that data yet. And of course, you ask them for changes. So if this program was useful to you, how would you improve it for future TAs? What am I missing from here that I should include? And then you use the results from your final evaluation to again go back and plan your next year's curriculum and improve on it. And then you put it into action and then repeat the cycle. And remember, when you're doing this end of semester evaluation, that it needs, again, to align with your goals, okay? Yeah. All right, so your assessment plan. Now, we have talked about prior formative assessments and summative assessments. We've talked about classroom observations, midterm evaluations, end of semester evaluations, observation protocols. We've talked about all sorts of assessment stuff. Now you have the tools. So now, in each team, you will identify the tools that you will use to assess your program, or the things that you want to use that you think you will use. Then you will draft those tools. If you're going to do classroom observations, write down what you're going to observe about. Write your observation protocol. Write a draft of your observation protocol. Write a draft of your midterm assessments for the TAs and for the course. Write a draft of your end of semester program evaluation. And then develop a timeline for when to implement these tools. Do you do pre-post? Well, will the pre happen before they start the program or right at the start of the program? When do you do the midterm evaluations? Week 5, week 10? Probably not week 10, especially 10-week semester. Especially not you. You guys have a 7-week semester. You definitely can't do it in week 10. And remember that the timeline needs to be timely so that both the TAs and the program facilitators can get feedback on time to be able to implement changes. And remember, again, objectives, activities, assessment. Tomorrow we're going to talk about a bunch of activities, but for now, your goals, your assessments should be aligned. Okay? And that's my last slide. So now you get to work on your assessment plans. You have something?
Canonizes view about what assessment and its values or its dangers. Do you like to weigh in on that?
Give me a sec.
So,
Give me 1 sec. Sorry.